Sister cheated with my fiancé and got pregnant just before our wedding, so I broke her nose and kicked him out. Now my parents want me to forgive them, but I cut them off and moved away. Hello everyone. Thank you for being here with me today. Before I begin my story, I'd love to know which city you're joining us from. Please feel free to share in the comments. Now, let me take you into this story. My name's Audrey. I'm 31 years old. For the last 6 years, my world has been the towering skyscrapers of downtown Chicago, where I work as a corporate lawyer specializing in mergers and acquisitions. It's a brutal, demanding field, but I'm good at it. I thrive on the pressure, on the late nights fueled by coffee and the thrill of finding that one critical weakness in the other side's argument. My life was a fortress I had meticulously built for myself, brick by painful brick, and at the very heart of that fortress was Grant. We'd been together for 4 years, engaged for the last 2. Grant was a financial analyst, handsome, stable, with a smile that could calm any storm. He was the kind of man you build a future with, the kind of man my parents approved of. He was my calm harbor in the chaotic sea of my career. Our life together was a beautiful, well-orchestrated symphony. Our wedding was just 3 weeks away, and every detail was perfect. The venue was a historic country club, the kind with rich, oak-paneled walls, roaring fireplaces, and sprawling views of a perfectly manicured golf course. We had spent an entire Saturday tasting cakes, a hilarious afternoon where we ended up laughing so hard we were sick of sugar. I remember Grant dabbing a bit of frosting on my nose and saying, "This one. This is the flavor of the rest of our lives." My dress was hanging in a protected garment bag in my closet, a simple, impossibly elegant A-line gown that made me feel like the best version of myself. Life wasn't just good, it was perfect. It was the exact life I had drawn up in my mind, the one I had sacrificed so much for. And then, there was my sister, Morgan. She's 3 years younger, works in marketing, and has a personality that sparkles. Growing up, we weren't enemies, but we weren't confidants either. We existed in different universes. I was the responsible one, the overachiever, the one who got straight A's. Morgan was the charming one, the social butterfly, the one who could get anything she wanted with a dazzling smile and a toss of her hair. My parents, Gerald and Patricia, adored her for it. I remember one Christmas when I was 16, I'd used my savings to buy them a new coffee machine they wanted. They said, "Oh, Audrey, that's so responsible of you." That same year, Morgan made them a clumsy, painted picture frame. They wept and called her the most thoughtful girl in the world. She was their baby, the one who needed protecting, while I was the one who could always take care of herself. Naturally, Morgan was my maid of honor. She had thrown me a beautiful bridal shower a month ago, all blush pink and champagne. She gave a speech about how she'd always looked up to her big sister, how she couldn't wait to have Grant as a brother. She smiled for all the pictures, her arm around my shoulders. It was the perfect picture of 2 loving sisters, a snapshot of familial bliss. But a picture is just a flat, one-dimensional image. It's silent. It never tells you what's really happening just outside the frame. It was a Wednesday morning. 3 days before the wedding. The air was crisp with the promise of autumn. I was at the office, on the 45th floor, buried under a mountain of depositions for a hostile takeover case. The pressure was immense. My firm was representing a smaller tech company, and I was putting in 80-hour weeks to ensure we protected them. My world had shrunk to the 4 walls of my office, the scent of stale coffee, and the endless black and white of legal documents. My phone buzzed on the polished surface of my desk. I glanced at it, saw Morgan's name, and felt a flicker of annoyance. Probably another last-minute question about the rehearsal dinner seating chart. I almost ignored it. I wish to God I had. But I didn't. I picked it up. The text read, "Can't wait to feel you again tonight. A's at the firm till late. Come over at 7 o'clock. I stared at the screen. The words didn't seem to make sense, like a foreign language I couldn't decipher. I read it once. Then a second time. My logical, lawyer brain immediately kicked in, sorting through possibilities. The first, most obvious conclusion: she texted me by mistake. She was seeing someone new and was being careless. It was sloppy, impulsive, classic Morgan. I was about to text back a sarcastic, "Wrong number, genius," when my eyes snagged on one part of the message, a single letter that felt like a punch to the gut. "A's at the firm till late. My name is Audrey." And I was, at that very moment, at the firm. I had just told my team, not 20 minutes ago, that I'd be staying late to prep for the next day's hearing. A cold, heavy dread started in my chest and began to spread through my limbs, a creeping paralysis. It was like being injected with ice water. The hum of the office fluorescent lights suddenly seemed deafening. The only person outside of this building who knew my exact work schedule for this evening was Grant. I'd sent him a text that morning, a quick, loving message, going to be a late one. "Don't wait up for me, my love." My fingers felt numb, disconnected from my body, as I typed a reply to Morgan. "Wrong number, I think." Her reply was instantaneous, almost too fast. "OMG, sorry. Meant for a coworker about a project. You know, late night brainstorming. So embarrassing. A project. At 7 p.m. A project that required feeling them again. I've cross-examined enough liars on the stand to know the stench of a poorly constructed lie. It was pathetic. It was insulting. But this wasn't some stranger on the witness stand. This was my sister. And the only person this text could possibly be about was Grant. My Grant. The man I was going to vow to love for the rest of my life on Saturday. The air in my office suddenly felt thick, suffocating. I stood up so fast my chair scraped against the floor. I grabbed my purse and coat, my hands shaking. My paralegal looked up, startled. "Everything okay, Audrey?" "I'm feeling sick," I said, my voice sounding distant and strange to my own ears. "I have to leave. Immediately." I was already out the door, my heels clicking down the long, silent hallway like a ticking bomb. The drive home was a surreal, out-of-body experience. I don't remember the traffic lights or the turns I took. My mind was a maelstrom of denial and white-hot rage. This is a misunderstanding. It has to be. There's a logical explanation. But the cold dread in my stomach knew better. I parked my car 3 blocks away from our house, the beautiful Greystone I'd put the down payment on with my first big bonus from the firm. I didn't want them to hear me pull up. I walked the rest of the way, the cold autumn wind whipping at my coat, but I felt nothing. And there it was. Morgan's little red convertible, parked brazenly in my driveway. The car I had co-signed the loan for when her credit was too poor. The sight of it was a physical blow. All the air left my lungs. I didn't go through the front door. My hands were shaking too much to even try the key. I went around to the side entrance, through the mudroom. The key turned silently in the lock. I slipped off my heels, my stocking feet silent on the cold tile. The house was quiet. Too quiet. My heart was hammering against my ribs, a frantic, trapped bird. I crept through the kitchen, past the wedding gifts that were starting to pile up on the counter, and I stood at the foot of the main staircase. And then I heard it. A faint murmur from upstairs. A low laugh. It was her laugh. From our bedroom. My bedroom. My bed. I stood at the bottom of those stairs for what felt like a lifetime. It was probably only 5 minutes, but in that time, something inside me broke. The part of me that believed in love, in family, in trust, it all just shattered. The rage I'd felt in the car was a child's tantrum compared to this. This was something cold, ancient, and primal. I've stayed calm while opposing counsel has called me every name in the book. I've kept my composure while a billionaire CEO tried to stare me down across a boardroom table. But standing there, listening to the sounds of my deepest betrayal, something inside me didn't just snap. It turned to steel. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I walked up those stairs, each step a deliberate, silent beat of a funeral drum. I walked down the hall to my bedroom door, which was slightly ajar. And I kicked it open. I kicked it with all the force of my shattered heart, and it slammed against the interior wall with a sound like a gunshot. They scrambled like rats in a trap. Grant, yelling my name in shock, fumbling with the sheets to cover himself. Morgan, letting out a pathetic little shriek and falling off the bed, clutching my pillow, to her chest. "Get up," I said. My voice was eerily calm, devoid of all emotion. It scared even me. "Audrey, wait, honey, I can explain," she whimpered from the floor, a tangled mess of limbs and my bedsheets. "Get up." She staggered to her feet, holding the sheet around her body. She started with that classic, insulting line, "It's not what you think." I hit her. Before she could finish the sentence, I crossed the room in 2 strides and slapped her across the face. It wasn't a calculated punch. It was a raw, instinctual act of rage. The sound cracked through the stunned silence of the room. The force of it sent her stumbling backward. She lost her footing on the rug, and the side of her head hit the sharp, heavy corner of our solid oak nightstand. There was another crack, a sickening, wet sound that I will never forget, and she went down in a heap on the floor. Blood, dark and shocking, began to bloom from her nose. Grant was screaming now, a high-pitched, panicked sound. "What did you do?" "Oh my God, Audrey!" I turned to him then, this strange man in my bed. "You have 10 minutes, I said, my voice like ice. "Get your things and get out of my house. Baby, please, we have to talk." "We can fix this," he sobbed. "The clock is ticking," I said, pulling my phone out and setting a timer. "Anything you leave behind gets burned." "I mean it. You can't just throw me out." "I live here," he yelled, desperation making his voice ugly. "Your name isn't on the deed," I said, reciting the legal fact with cold precision. 9 minutes. While he scrambled, crying and begging, to throw his clothes into a suitcase, I walked downstairs to the kitchen. I grabbed a handful of black trash bags and walked back up. I threw them at his feet. Morgan was still on the floor, conscious now, moaning, blood pooling on the new cream-colored rug I'd spent a month picking out. "Audrey, please," Grant begged one last time as he dragged his suitcase toward the door. "I love you. It was just a mistake." "How long?" I asked, my voice flat, blocking his exit. He wouldn't meet my eyes. He stared at the floor. 2 months. 2 months. He was sleeping with my sister while we were finalizing flower arrangements. While we were writing our vows to each other. Was it worth it? I asked. He started to answer, his mouth opening and closing like a fish, but I slammed the bedroom door in his face. I walked calmly downstairs, picked up the phone, and dialed 911. "My sister has had an accident at my house," I told the operator. "She needs medical attention." I gave them the address and hung up. The paramedics arrived with impressive speed. They were professional, efficient, asking questions I answered in a calm monotone. They loaded Morgan onto a stretcher, her face a grotesque, swollen mess. Her nose was clearly broken. She kept trying to make eye contact with me, her eyes pleading, but I just stared at a point on the wall just past her head. As they were loading her into the ambulance, my phone started ringing. The screen flashed, "Mom." I knew Morgan must have called her, blubbering her side of the story. I silenced the call and put the phone in my pocket. Grant was just leaving as the ambulance pulled away, dragging his suitcase of shame down my front walk. He scurried past my parents' car as it screeched into the driveway. They must have broken the speed limit to get there. They were at my door before I could even lock it. My mother, Patricia, burst in first. She was already crying, her face blotchy and contorted with a grief that wasn't for me. "What did you do?" she wailed, looking around my living room as if it were a crime scene. "I defended my home," I said, my voice still eerily flat. "You broke her nose. The doctors just called us from the ambulance. She might need surgery to fix it," she shrieked, her voice rising with hysteria. "She's lucky I didn't break more," I replied calmly, walking over to the fireplace and leaning against the mantel. I felt strangely detached, like I was watching a movie of someone else's life. My father, Gerald, stepped forward. He put on his calm, rational, mediator voice, the one he used when Morgan and I would argue as kids. "Honey, I know you're angry. You have every right to be." "Angry?" I let out a harsh, barking laugh that sounded ugly even to my own ears. "Dad, I found him in my bed with my sister. My fiancé. The man I was supposed to marry in 3 days. Angry doesn't even begin to cover it." My mother gasped, clutching her pearls in a display of theatrical shock. My dad's face went pale. For one fleeting second, I saw a flicker of horror and understanding in his eyes. I thought, finally. They see it. They understand my pain. But then my mother, my own mother, looked at me, her eyes filled not with sympathy, but with reproach. And she said the words that would sever our relationship forever. "People make mistakes, Audrey. She's your sister." I stared at her, my mind refusing to process the sheer, stunning absurdity of what she just said. "A mistake," I said slowly, enunciating every word as if speaking to a child. "A mistake is forgetting to pick up milk from the store. A mistake is not systematically betraying your own sister for months, sleeping with her fiancé in her own bed. You need to forgive her," my mother insisted, her tears now turning into frustrated, angry sobs. "That's what family does. Family forgives." Forgive her? I was incredulous. She's not a child who stole a cookie. She's a 28-year-old woman who made a conscious decision to destroy my life. My dad tried his logical approach again. "What's done is done, Audrey. Nothing can change that now. But she is still your sister. Blood is blood." "Blood?" I shot back, the cold calm finally cracking, revealing the white-hot rage beneath. "She was sleeping with my fiancé. In my home. In my bed. That's the blood you want me to honor?" "Don't be so crude," my mother snapped, her grief vanishing, replaced by indignation. "This is a horrible situation, but for you to resort to violence, to send your own sister to the hospital? What were you thinking?" "I was thinking that she is no longer my sister," I said, my voice dropping back to that icy calm. "She's dead to me. And if you are standing here, in my house, defending her, then so are you." The silence that followed was heavy and absolute. Finally, my dad spoke, his voice strained. "You don't mean that." "Oh, I do," I said. I walked to the front door and held it open. "You're her parents, too. You've clearly picked your side. So get out of my house." "We're not picking sides," my mom cried, her voice pleading. "You are standing in my living room," I said, my voice like steel, asking me to forgive the person who blew up my entire world, instead of asking me if I'm okay. "You are comforting the perpetrator instead of the victim. That is aside. Now, get out." They left. My mother was wailing, a dramatic, keening sound. My father, looking defeated, tried to maintain some shred of dignity. I locked the door behind them. The click of the deadbolt was the sound of a door closing on my entire life. That night, I didn't sleep. I didn't cry. I didn't pace the floors or drink myself into oblivion. I acted. I went into my home office, the one sanctuary in the house that didn't feel tainted. I opened my laptop, and I began the systematic, methodical demolition of the life I had so carefully built. First, the wedding. I created a spreadsheet, just like I would for a work project. Column A, vendor. Column B, contact info. Column C, deposit paid. Column D, status. I started at the top. The venue. I called the event coordinator. The woman on the phone was cloyingly sympathetic. "Oh, my dear, I am so sorry to hear that." She then gently reminded me that the final deposit of $10,000 was, of course, non-refundable. "I understand," I said. "Keep it." I didn't care about the money. Money I could earn back. My dignity was another matter. I went down the list. Caterer, cancelled. Florist, cancelled. Band, cancelled. I lost thousands and thousands of dollars, but with each call, I felt lighter. It was the cost of freedom. Then, I opened my email. I drafted a message to all 150 of our wedding guests. The subject line was stark: wedding cancelled. The body of the email was even starker: due to infidelity, the wedding of Audrey and Grant is cancelled. We ask for your privacy at this time. No further details will be provided. I read it over once, then hit send without a moment's hesitation. Let the truth be told. Next, I began the digital purge. I opened my phone and, one by one, I blocked them. Morgan, blocked on all platforms. Grant, blocked. My mother, blocked. My father, blocked. Their existence was methodically erased from my phone, my social media, my email, my life. They were ghosts now. At 1 a.m, I called an emergency locksmith. The man on the phone sounded tired but unsurprised. "Triple the rate for an after-hours call, ma'am." "Fine," I said. "Just get here." I stood on the cold porch in my robe while he worked, the quiet hum and click of his tools the only sound in the dead of night. He changed every lock on the house: the front door, the side door, the back door, the garage. The house I once shared with Grant was no longer a home. It was my fortress, and I was pulling up the drawbridge. The next morning, sleep-deprived but running on pure adrenaline, I called the top real estate agent in the city. "Hi, it's Audrey Reeves," I said, my voice all business. "I want to sell my house. I want it sold fast. Price it to move. I don't care about getting top dollar, I care about speed." Then, I opened my work laptop. I sent an email to the managing partner of my firm's main office in Chicago. For years, he'd been trying to recruit me to move up from our smaller branch. The promotion would come with a significant salary increase and a much clearer path to partnership. I had always hesitated because of Grant and our life here. Now, there was nothing holding me back. I wrote a simple, direct email: "If the offer to relocate to the Chicago office is still on the table, I am ready to accept. I can start in 2 weeks." He replied in under 5 minutes: "Welcome to Chicago. We're thrilled to have you." The days that followed were a whirlwind of logistics, a welcome distraction. Morgan tried to come by. I saw her car pull up through my office window. Her face was a mess of bandages and bruises. She rang the doorbell for 20 minutes straight. I sat at my desk, researching the Illinois bar exam requirements, and just let her ring until she gave up. Grant showed up that evening with his father, banging on the door, crying, begging me to just talk to him. I put on noise-canceling headphones and continued to methodically pack my books into boxes. My phone blew up with calls from numbers I didn't recognize: aunts, uncles, cousins, all dispatched by my mother to be her flying monkeys. I blocked them all, one by one. One voicemail got through from my mother's sister before I could block her number. "You're a monster, Audrey, for what you're doing to your mother," she'd sobbed into the phone. "Morgan made a terrible mistake, but you're the one who is destroying this family." I deleted it without a second thought. I wasn't destroying the family. I was escaping a sinking ship. A week later, just as the moving truck was scheduled to arrive and my house was a chaotic landscape of boxes, the legal maneuvering began. It was predictable, really. Morgan, fueled by my parents' indignation on her behalf, tried to press charges for assault. I received a call from a detective I knew from some pro bono work I'd done. He sounded more amused than concerned. "Audrey," he said, a chuckle in his voice, "your sister is down here at the station trying to file a report against you. Wants to tell me what happened?" I didn't miss a beat. "She was trespassing in my home with my ex-fiancé," I stated calmly, as if reading from a legal brief. "I discovered them, and in the ensuing confrontation, she fell. I defended my property." "She's telling a different story. She says you invited her over." "Check my phone records," I said, my voice turning to ice. There was no invitation. As her presence was predicated on a lie to facilitate an affair with my fiancé, for all legal purposes, she entered my home under false pretenses. That's breaking and entering. There was a long, thoughtful pause on the other end of the line. "You sure you want to go that route, counselor?" he asked, a new respect in his tone. "If she drops her frivolous charges, I will decline to press mine for trespassing," I offered. It was a classic legal checkmate. 2 hours later, I got a call back. Morgan had withdrawn her complaint. The physical damage was done, but the legal battle was a stalemate that I had won before it even began. She was now facing a mountain of medical debt for the surgeries to fix her face, and her insurance company was fighting to cover it, citing that the injury resulted from a personal altercation. That was her problem now. But the real bombshell came on Monday, my last week in town. I was in my downtown office, in a high-stakes meeting with a new client, a CEO whose company was facing a massive SEC investigation. We were going over sensitive financial documents when my assistant buzzed me. "I'm sorry to interrupt, Audrey, but your fiancé is here to see you." Before I could respond, the door to my office opened, and Grant walked in. He looked terrible. His eyes were red and puffy, his clothes were wrinkled. He had somehow gotten past building security by saying he was my fiancé, which, I realized with a sickening jolt, was technically true until I updated my emergency contact information. "We need to talk," he said, his voice desperate. My client, a powerful man accustomed to being the center of attention, looked extremely uncomfortable. He cleared his throat and started gathering his papers. "I can come back later." "No, stay," I said, my voice dangerously low as I turned my full attention to Grant. "Mr. Sinclair, you are not welcome here. You need to leave now." "Not until you hear me out," he said, his voice cracking. He took a deep breath, and the next words out of his mouth were meant to be a nuclear bomb. "I'm sorry, okay? I know I messed up. But, there's something else." He looked me dead in the eye. "Morgan's pregnant." My client's eyes went wide. I, however, didn't even blink. I felt nothing. It was just another piece of data. "Congratulations," I said, my voice dripping with ice. "Now get out." "It might be yours," he blurted out, the words tumbling out in a rush. "We don't know." "It might be yours." Now, that got my attention. Might be. The deliberate, manipulative uncertainty of it. I slowly stood up, walked to my desk, and picked up my phone. I didn't raise my voice. I called building security. "I need immediate assistance in my office on the 34th floor. An unauthorized individual is creating a disturbance and refusing to leave." "Audrey, please," he begged, as I could hear the heavy footsteps of the guards approaching down the hall. "Don't do this." I looked him dead in the eye. "You slept with my sister for months. If she's pregnant, it is hers, not yours. And even if a miracle occurred and it wasn't, I don't care. You made your choice." Just then, 2 large security guards appeared at the door. "This man was just leaving," I told them. "Permanently." As they escorted him out, his composure finally shattered. He screamed down the hallway, for all my colleagues to hear, "I'll take you to court." I'll demand a paternity test. You'll have to pay child support for the rest of your life. I just stood in my doorway and smiled faintly. I'm a lawyer, you idiot. Try me. That night, sitting on the floor of my nearly empty house, surrounded by boxes and the ghosts of a life that was no longer mine, I had a thought. A cold, calculated, lawyerly thought. I pulled out my phone, started a voice memo for my own records, and then used a burner app to call Morgan. She answered on the third ring, her voice weary and stuffy from her broken nose. What do you want, Audrey? One question, I said, my voice calm and professional. When did it actually start between you and Grant? There was a long silence on the other end. Why does it matter? She finally asked, her tone defensive. Because if you're pregnant, and if Grant is delusional enough to claim it might be his, the timeline matters. A lot. For any potential custody battle or child support claim. I was bluffing, of course. There would be no custody battle. But it was the right bait. Lawyers know that the timeline is everything. 2 months, she said, the lie coming easily. I told you. 2 months, Morgan? I pressed, my voice hardening just enough to show I wasn't buying it. I've seen the way you two look at each other. This wasn't a 2-month fling. When did it really start? There was another long, heavy pause. I could hear her breathing on the other end. Then, a tiny, resentful voice, barely a whisper, admitted, 4 months. 4 freaking months. My mind raced, connecting the dots. The night I was celebrating a huge promotion at the firm, the one Grant said he was too sick with the flu to come out for. The weekend I went to that legal conference in New York, and he said he was going on a fishing trip with his buddies. I felt a wave of nausea, but I pushed it down. Thank you for your honesty, I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm, and I hung up. But I had it. The admission, safely recorded. The next 2 days became my own private investigation. I didn't pack. I didn't sleep. I sat at my dining room table with my laptop, a glass of expensive scotch, and 4 years of financial statements. It was a grim parody of my professional life. I went through old credit card statements, line by line, cross-referencing them with social media posts and old calendars. The lies started to unravel. I found hotel charges for a boutique hotel in our city on the exact weekend Grant was supposedly visiting his sick grandmother out of state. I scrolled through an old acquaintance's Instagram feed and found a group photo from a girls' night that Morgan had attended. And there, in the background, parked on the street, was Grant's distinctive vintage car. I built an entire timeline of their deceit, a detailed spreadsheet complete with dates, times, and photographic evidence. Why? Because I'm a lawyer, and documentation is my religion. It's how you win. On Wednesday, my parents tried to ambush me one last time. They still had a spare key I had forgotten about. I came home from a final meeting at the office to find them sitting in my living room, as if they had every right to be there. We need to talk, my dad, Gerald, said, his voice firm. You have 60 seconds to leave my house before I call the police and have you removed for trespassing, I replied, not even breaking stride as I put my briefcase down. My mother, Patricia, started her usual tear routine. It was a performance I had seen many times. Morgan is struggling, Audrey. The medical bills are piling up, and Grant lost his job. My eyebrows shot up. He lost his job? My dad nodded grimly. His company found out about the situation. They have a morality clause in their contracts. They said it showed poor judgment and a lack of moral character. I laughed. A real, hard, unrestrained laugh. The predatory investment firm that's all about ethics and public image fired him for being unethical. Oh, the irony is just beautiful. This isn't funny, my mother snapped, her tears vanishing as anger took over. He is going to be the father of your niece or nephew. He needs your help. No, I said, turning to face them, my voice dropping low. He slept with my sister for 4 months while he was engaged to me. And you are sitting in my house, asking me to feel sorry for him? That tells me everything I need to know about your values. About where your loyalties lie. My dad tried to reason with me, falling back on the old guilt trips. Your grandmother would be ashamed of the way you're acting. Oh, he went there. My grandmother, the matriarch, the one person in the family who had always seen me clearly. She had raised me half the time while my parents worked, and she died 2 years ago, leaving me her entire inheritance because, in her exact words, Audrey's the only one in this family with any damn sense. Grandma left me everything and Morgan nothing for a reason, I shot back, my voice sharp as glass. She saw what you two have always refused to see. She told me, on her deathbed, that Morgan was a snake and to always watch my back. I guess she was right. That finally shut them up. I walked to the front door and opened it wide. Leave your key on the table on your way out. As they walked past me, defeated, my mother tried one last, desperate manipulation. She clutched her chest dramatically. I have a heart condition, Audrey. All of this stress, it could kill me. I looked her straight in the eye, my expression unmoving. Then die, I said, my voice a dead, flat whisper. But do it away from my house. Even my father looked shocked at that. But I meant every single word. The moving truck arrived on a gray, overcast Monday morning. I stood on the porch and watched them load the last of my boxes, the physical remnants of a life that no longer felt like mine. I didn't look back as I got in my car and drove away from the house, from the city, from the family that had broken my heart. The 12-hour drive to Chicago was a silent, meditative journey. I didn't listen to music or podcasts. I just drove, watching the flat, endless plains of the Midwest roll by, a blank canvas for a new life. Chicago was overwhelming at first. It was big, loud, and breathtakingly cold. But it was also anonymous. No one knew me here. No one knew my story. It was perfect. My new apartment was a sleek, modern high-rise in the Loop, on the 50th floor. It had floor-to-ceiling windows with a stunning view of the city and a sliver of Lake Michigan. For the first week, it felt sterile and empty, an echo chamber for my own thoughts. I lived on Thai takeout, slept on an air mattress in the middle of the living room, and was surrounded by a mountain of cardboard boxes. But I didn't feel lonely. I felt clean. I felt purged. My new job was exactly the distraction I needed. It was intense, demanding, and filled with brilliant, competitive people who pushed me to be better. I threw myself into it completely. I was the first one in the office in the morning and the last one to leave at night. I lived and breathed contract law. I impressed the senior partners, brought in a new client in my first month, and solidified my promotion. My new salary was a full 40% higher than before, and I was on the fast track to a full partnership. I was building a new fortress, a taller, stronger one, on the shores of Lake Michigan. On the weekends, I forced myself to explore. I put on my headphones and got lost in the city. I spent a whole day at the Art Institute, standing in front of a Monet until my feet ached. I walked for miles along the lakefront, the icy wind a welcome shock to my system. I found a small, quiet coffee shop in a neighborhood called Lincoln Park that felt like a sanctuary. I was healing, not by talking about it, but by living. By putting one foot in front of the other and moving forward. About a month after I arrived, my firm hosted a networking event at a downtown bar. I almost didn't go. The last thing I wanted to do was make small talk. But I forced myself. And that's where I met Julian. He was an architect, with a kind, intelligent face and a laugh that was warm and genuine. We started talking about the city's architecture, and it was easy. Effortless. He asked me what brought me to Chicago so suddenly. And for the first time, I decided to tell someone the whole, unvarnished truth. I laid it all out, the sister, the fiancé, the betrayal, the escape. I expected him to be horrified, to see me as some damaged, vindictive woman and make a polite excuse to leave. When I finished my story, he was quiet for a long moment. He just looked at me, his eyes full of a gentle empathy. Then he said, "Wow. I am so sorry you had to go through that. They sound like terrible people. And they absolutely don't deserve you." He didn't push for more details. He didn't offer unsolicited advice. He just respected my story. It was a perfect response. We started seeing each other. Nothing serious at first, just dinner at a neighborhood Italian place, a movie, long walks exploring different parts of the city. It was a new beginning, a quiet, gentle chapter after the raging storm. The peace, of course, couldn't last forever. It lasted for about 2 glorious months. Then, the ghosts of my past decided to come back and haunt me, all at once. The first wave came via a phone call from my old paralegal, a lovely woman named Carol who had promised to keep me in the loop. "Audrey, I thought you should know," she said, her voice hesitant and full of pity. "Morgan and Grant got married." I was sitting at my new desk, overlooking the Chicago River. I felt a strange, detached curiosity. "When?" "Last weekend," she said. "A quick little ceremony at the courthouse. Your parents were the witnesses." I laughed. A real, genuine, out-loud laugh. The absurdity of it was almost beautiful. Of course they did. They deserved each other. Two fundamentally broken, selfish people, now legally bound to each other in their shared toxicity. It was a better, more fitting revenge than anything I could have possibly planned. I wished them a lifetime of misery together. But then, on Tuesday, the second wave hit. It came in the form of a cold, formal email from my parents' attorney. They were formally contesting my grandmother's will. The legal document was filled with jargon, but the message was clear. They claimed I had exerted undue influence over my grandmother in her final, frail years. They were arguing that her entire inheritance, a diversified investment portfolio and assets worth nearly $1.8 million, should be split evenly between Morgan and me. The sheer gall of it took my breath away. I immediately forwarded the email to my own estate attorney, a sharp, no-nonsense man named Mr. Davison. I called him a minute later. "Can they actually do this?" I asked, a tremor of anger in my voice. "They can certainly try," he said, his voice calm and reassuring. "But they won't win. Your grandmother was of perfectly sound mind when she drafted her will. We have medical records, witness statements, and something else. She specifically excluded Morgan, in writing. In fact, she left a personal letter for you, to be opened in just this eventuality. I have it here in your file. I'll email you a scan of it right now." I had never seen it before. The email arrived a minute later. I clicked open the attachment, and my grandmother's familiar, elegant handwriting filled the screen. "To my dearest Audrey," it began. "If you are reading this, then I am gone, and I suspect your parents and sister are causing you trouble. You are probably wondering why everything goes to you. The truth is simple, you are the only one in this family who possesses true integrity. Morgan is a charmer, but she is weak. She covets what others have instead of building her own life. Your parents enable her because she is their baby. But you, my dear girl, you stand for something. You forge your own path. Don't let them bully or guilt you into sharing what I have left for you. This is yours, and yours alone, because you earned it simply by being the strong, incredible woman you are." Tears, hot and sudden, welled in my eyes as I read her words. It was a message from beyond the grave, a final validation from the one person whose opinion I had always valued above all others. She knew. She had always known. I took a deep breath, saved the letter, and forwarded it to my parents' attorney. I added only one line of my own. "See you in court." The attacks from my old life kept coming, but now they felt less like assaults and more like the desperate flailings of drowning people. The next week, Grant called me from a number I didn't recognize. I almost hung up, but he spoke quickly, his voice a frantic rush. "Don't hang up. I have the prenatal paternity test results. You need to see them." I had them rush it. "The baby is yours, Audrey. It's yours." My blood ran cold for a second, a flicker of the old fear. "Send the results to my attorney," I said, my voice clipped and professional, and I ended the call. The results arrived in my attorney's inbox a short time later, a PDF from a lab in a state I'd never even heard of. It looked official enough. But I'm a lawyer. I deal with fraudulent documents for a living. I told my attorney to hire a private investigator. Within 24 hours, the PI confirmed our suspicions. The lab didn't exist. The address was a P.O. box. The doctor who signed the report had a suspended medical license. The entire document was a pathetic, amateurish fabrication, a desperate attempt to trap me into a financial obligation. My attorney sent them a blistering cease and desist letter, along with a demand for a legitimate test from a nationally accredited lab. We also mentioned that we would be happy to pursue criminal charges for fraud. We never heard back about it. But the most beautifully ironic moment came on a Thursday afternoon. I was in my office when I got a call from Harrison, the CEO of the tech company I had represented back in my old city. We'd stayed in touch. "Audrey, you are not going to believe this," he said, and I could hear the laughter in his voice. "Try me," I replied, leaning back in my chair. "Your ex-fiancé, Grant Sinclair, applied for a senior analyst position with one of our subsidiary companies. And for his professional references, he had the audacity to list you." I was stunned into a moment of pure, silent disbelief. The sheer, unmitigated gall of the man. "You're kidding me," I finally breathed. "I wish I was," he cackled. "So, what do you want me to do? Should I tank his application right now?" A cold, brilliant, and deeply satisfying idea began to form in my mind. "No," I said slowly, a smile spreading across my face. "No, do the opposite. Let him interview. Let him go through all the rounds. Let him get to the very final stage, make him think he has the job in the bag. Then, at the very last minute, check his references." Harrison let out a roar of laughter on the other end of the line. "You are an evil genius, Audrey. I love it." The final blow from my family came from my mother. She left me a hysterical, sobbing voicemail, claiming she had been admitted to the hospital with chest pains, that all the stress was killing her, and that she needed her daughter. It was a masterclass in emotional manipulation. But I was immune to it now. I calmly called the hospital she mentioned. The operator was polite. "I'm sorry, ma'am, we have no patient by that name." I called every other hospital in the greater metropolitan area. The answer was the same everywhere. She had lied about being in the hospital, a desperate, pathetic ploy to get me to call her. That's when I decided to go nuclear. I hired a boutique PR firm in my old city. I had them prepare a professional, polished press release about my career success, my big promotion, and my seamless transition to the prestigious Chicago firm. And buried deep in the third paragraph, like a hidden landmine, was this carefully worded sentence: "Ms. Reeves recently relocated from Charleston following the unfortunate cancellation of her wedding after discovering her fiancé's long-term affair with her sister, Morgan Reeves." It was factual. It was professional. And it was devastating. It would be the first thing that popped up whenever anyone Googled their names. Then, I made a few quiet calls to some old contacts in the pharmaceutical industry, where Morgan still worked. I didn't have to say much. I just casually mentioned her impressive, newfound ability to fabricate complex medical documents. Her company, as it turned out, had a very strict morality clause in their employee contracts. And then, for the grand finale, I sold my grandmother's house. The beautiful historic home in Savannah that Morgan had always dreamed of raising a family in. I sold it to a large development corporation. They were going to tear it down and build luxury condos. The sale closed in a week. A few weeks later, the results of the real, court-admissible paternity test finally came through my lawyer's office. Not mine. It was Grant's. The timeline of their 4-month affair was a lie, too. The conception date proved they'd been together much longer. I forwarded the results to my parents' new address. The subject line was simple: "It's a girl." The body of the email contained only 2 words: "Congratulations, grandparents." My entire old life was now a smoking crater in the ground. And I was the one who had lit the match. If you're still listening, could you please do me a huge favor and like this video and comment the number 1 down below? It lets me know you're here with me on this journey. Your support is a massive encouragement for me. Please, comment the number 1, and then let me tell you what happened next. A year passed. A year of blessed, uninterrupted peace. My life in Chicago was everything my old life was supposed to be, but better, because it was real. It was mine. I made full partner at my firm, the youngest in its history. Julian and I were serious now. We had moved in together, into a beautiful, classic brownstone in Lincoln Park with a small garden out back. I was happy. It was a quiet, stable happiness, not the loud, performative kind I'd had before. It was genuine. The past was a distant country, a place with a different language that I no longer spoke. Until my old friend Leo called. Leo had been my one true friend through all of this, a lifeline of sanity. "You need to sit down for this, Audrey," he said, his voice a strange mixture of somber and giddy. "What now, Leo?" I sighed, settling into my favorite armchair with a cup of tea, bracing myself. "Morgan and Grant are getting a divorce." "That was fast," I said, a dry, humorless smile touching my lips. "I gave them 2 years, tops." "It gets so much better," Leo said, and I could hear the grin in his voice. He cheated on her. I actually spit out my tea. I choked, coughed, and then started to laugh. "You are kidding me. You have to be kidding." "I am dead serious," he said. "With one of her old college friends, a woman named Becca. And Audrey, get this, she's pregnant." The exquisite, beautiful, terrible poetry of it all. The perfect, karmic circularity. I laughed until tears streamed down my face and my ribs ached. It wasn't a happy laugh. It was the sound of pure, crystallized, cosmic satisfaction. It was the universe finally balancing its books. But the real bombshell, the one that recontextualized everything, came a few weeks after that. An unknown number started calling my office line. It called 17 times in one day. I instructed my assistant to ignore it. Finally, the person gave up and left a voicemail. My assistant emailed me the audio file with a note: "It's a Ms. Morgan Sinclair. She sounds unwell. She says it's about fraud and a legal timeline. She says you need to know." Legal reasons? That was the bait, and I took it. I called her back from a recorded line in my office. "You have 3 minutes," I said when she answered, her voice a ragged, desperate whisper. "Audrey," she sobbed. "Grant and we started before you even met him." The line went silent. I didn't know what to say. "What?" "I was seeing him first. For about 6 months. Then you met him at that bar association event. I'd shown him pictures of you. I told him all about my successful older sister. He knew exactly who you were. He targeted you." "You're lying," I said, but my voice lacked conviction. "I have texts, Audrey. Emails. He thought that dating you, the better sister, would make me jealous enough to finally commit to him. When I didn't, he proposed to you to punish me, to try and force my hand." My mind was reeling, trying to process this new, horrifying layer of deceit. I felt nothing. No new rage, no fresh pain. Just a profound, bone-deep coldness. A confirmation that my decision to cut them all out of my life was the single most correct and necessary choice I had ever made. So, your affair was the original relationship? I asked, my voice clinical, detached. Yes, she cried. The 4 months I admitted to, try 4 years. The entire time. Your whole relationship was a lie, a tool he was using against me. Why are you telling me this now, Morgan? I asked, my voice flat. Because he's trying to sue me for alimony in our divorce. He claims I ruined his life and his career. I need you to testify. I need you to tell the court that he was the one lying from the start, that he pursued you under false pretenses. The sheer, stunning audacity. You want me to help you? I asked, a slow, incredulous smile spreading across my face. I want you to know the truth, she shrieked. He played us both. No, Morgan, I said softly, the truth of it settling over me with absolute clarity. He played you. I was just collateral damage. Send whatever proof you have to my attorney. Do not ever contact me again. And I hung up the phone. She did send it all. For years of their secret life. The text from Grant the morning after he met me, hooked your sister. This should be fun. The email from Morgan the night I got engaged, she said yes. Your move. It was all there. A detailed blueprint of my own destruction, and I had never even been the target. The story, I thought, had to be over. There could be no more twists, no more lies to uncover. I was wrong. The final, foundational crack in the edifice of my old life came last month. My father, Gerald, reached out through my attorney. He wanted to meet. He was going to be in Chicago on business. Against my better judgment, driven by a sliver of morbid curiosity, I agreed. We met at a quiet, expensive steakhouse in the Loop. A neutral location. He looked terrible. He looked like he had aged 20 years in the last 2. His hair was completely gray, his shoulders were slumped, and there was a defeated, hollow look in his eyes. I'm not here to apologize, he said, his voice rough as he downed a glass of whiskey in one go. Good, I replied, pushing a piece of lettuce around my plate. Because I wouldn't accept it. I'm here to tell you that you were right, he said, looking at his empty glass. You were right about everything. About Morgan. About your mother. About the entire damn family. He told me that after Morgan's divorce, she had moved back home, a single mother with no job and a mountain of debt. My mother, Patricia, had babied her, defended her, and shielded her from all consequences. Then, my father discovered the truth. My mother had been systematically draining his retirement accounts and their joint savings for years, sending Morgan money behind his back, long before her life even imploded. Why? I asked, though I already suspected the answer. Because she's her baby, he said, his voice thick with 30 years of bitterness. Her favorite. She always has been. He paused, signaled the waiter for another whiskey, and then he looked me dead in the eye. And last month, I finally found out why. Morgan isn't my daughter. The words hung in the air between us, sucking all the oxygen out of the room. I just stared at him, my mind blank. What? Your mother had an affair, early in our marriage. With an old college boyfriend. Morgan is the result of that affair. I did a DNA test last week, after I found the wire transfers. It confirmed it. I raised her as my own for 30 years, loved her as my own, and she was never even mine. I was speechless. My entire life, my entire family structure, the rivalries, the resentments, the roles we all played, it was all built on a foundation of lies. It was a house of cards. So what now? I finally managed to whisper. The divorce is almost final, he said, his voice flat. I'm taking everything I can. I'm moving to Florida next month. Starting over. He threw a pile of cash on the table, more than enough to cover the bill. He stood up. I needed to tell you. You were the only honest person in this whole mess. The only one. He walked out of the restaurant without looking back, leaving me alone with the ruins of a family that, I now realized, had never really existed at all. The real finale, the last dying gasp of my old life, came last week. I was leaving my office late, walking towards the elevator, when I heard a voice call my name. It was a weak, ragged sound. Audrey. I turned. It was Morgan. I almost didn't recognize her. She was skeletal. Her skin had a sickly, yellow tinge, and her eyes were sunken and hollow. The expensive clothes she wore hung off her emaciated frame like a scarecrow. The nose I had broken all that time ago had healed crooked, a permanent, visible reminder of that day, making her whole face look off-center and distorted. "Security is on their way up," I said flatly, my hand already on my phone. "Please," she begged, taking a shuffling step forward. Her voice was a weak rasp. "Just 1 minute. I'm dying." "We're all dying, Morgan," I replied, my voice devoid of emotion. "No," she whispered, leaning against the wall for support. "I'm actually dying. Liver failure. From the drinking. It got bad after the divorce. The doctors say I have 6 months, maybe less, without a transplant." She took a ragged, painful breath. "I'm not on the transplant list. My condition, the history of alcoholism, they won't approve me in time." I waited, my expression unmoving, saying nothing. "You're a match," she finally blurted out, tears welling in her sunken eyes. "I know you are. We were tested as kids, remember? When our cousin Tony needed a kidney?" I remembered. "We were both universal donors. You want my liver," I stated. It was not a question. "Part of it," she pleaded, her voice cracking. "A living donor transplant. The doctors said you would make a full recovery. And I would live." Just then, the heavy doors to the elevator bay opened, and 2 of the building's security guards stepped out. They knew me well. "Ms. Reeves," one of them said, his eyes flicking to the pathetic figure huddled against the wall. "Is this woman bothering you?" I looked at Morgan. I really looked at her. At this broken, dying remnant of the golden child. The favorite daughter. The one who had been given everything. The one who had taken the only man I'd ever truly loved, not out of love, but out of boredom and spite. The one who had helped build a life on a mountain of lies. "Yes," I said to the guards, my voice clear and steady. "She is. Get her out of my building." "Audrey, no!" "Please," she shrieked as they gently but firmly took her by the arms. "I'm your sister. I'm your sister." "No, you're not," I said, my voice cold and clear as glass. "You never were." "I'll die," she screamed, her cries echoing down the marble hallway as they dragged her away. The entire lobby had stopped to watch. I turned and walked away without looking back. Then die. That night, Julian and I were quiet. He knew something was wrong. Finally, he looked at me, his kind eyes full of a troubled concern. "You could save her life, you know," he said softly. "I could," I agreed, staring into the fireplace. "But you're not going to." "No." "Why?" he asked, not with judgment, but with a genuine desire to understand the part of me that was forged in that fire. "Would you give a piece of your own body to a stranger who tried to burn your life to the ground for sport?" I asked him. "She's not a stranger, Audrey," he said gently. "She is to me," I replied. And I meant it with every fiber of my being. My mother, Patricia, showed up at my house 2 days ago. I have no idea how she found my address in Chicago. She must have hired someone. She was standing on my doorstep when I got home from work, looking old, frail, and broken. "Your sister is dying," she said, her voice trembling with a rage born of grief. "I heard you can save her." "I could," I said. "But you won't," she stated, her voice flat. "No." She slapped me. It was a hard, stinging blow, with all the years of her misguided rage and resentment behind it. "You're a monster," she hissed. I didn't even flinch. I just looked her in the eye. "I'm what you made me," I said, my voice quiet but unyielding. "I'm the strong one. The independent one. The one who didn't need you. Congratulations. Your parenting worked perfectly." I turned and walked into my house, closing the door softly in her face. I heard her let out a gut-wrenching sob on my porch before she finally left. And now, here I am. People who hear this story, the ones who don't understand, they call me cold. They call me vindictive. They call me a monster. And maybe I am. But here's the thing they don't get. This isn't about revenge anymore. It's about peace. For the first time in my life, I have peace. I sleep a full 8 hours every night. My jaw isn't clenched. I don't wake up from nightmares of betrayal. Morgan will die. My mother will spend the rest of her days blaming me, a lonely woman consumed by her own choices. My father, Gerald, will probably find a nice widow in Florida and live out his days in the sun, free from the lies that defined his life. The family I grew up with will be completely and utterly dissolved. And I'll be here. Successful, wealthy, loved by a good and honest man. At peace. They always say you can't choose your family. That is the biggest lie we are ever told. You choose them every single day, by deciding whether or not to keep them in your life. I chose to evict mine. And it was the best decision I ever made. Blood doesn't make a family. Loyalty does. And when they prove they have none, neither should you. Thank you for listening to my whole story. It wasn't easy to relive, but it was important for me to tell it, in its entirety. If any part of this resonated with you, if you've ever felt the pain of betrayal or had to make an impossible choice to save yourself, please, consider liking this video. And if you feel comfortable, share your own thoughts in the comments below. Knowing I'm not alone in this, and that you're not alone in whatever you're going through, it means more than you know. Thank you.